So I'm just going to take some notes of the book I just read. Well, you've probably noticed that my voice is not that great at the moment because I'm actually feeling really sick, and I've got pneumonia, and I'm finding it a bit hard to not hard to breathe, but just a bit hard to speak. So forgive me if sometimes what I might say may seem a bit too quiet and a bit unclear, so sorry about that. But not even pneumonia can stop my critiquing of certain books that I somehow didn't completely enjoy. Well, hello there, it's me, Student Black / Janne Karneus, and well, my voice is feeling a bit kinda, oops, I can't speak that well, but I just felt like I needed to make a new video at the moment because, well, I've been watching some of my older things and I just wanted to make a new review video of one of the books I unfortunately also had to put down, which I mentioned in my previous video. And yeah, let's get straight to it. In terms of how I'm doing in general, I've been off of work for a few weeks now because of my pneumonia, and so yeah, you can probably tell why. That, you know, yeah, let's get to the video. So the book I decided to make a review of and also decided to stop reading is called Boots, A Puss in Boots Retelling by Julian Greystoke, and unfortunately this book was just too minimal for me, and not in the right way, unfortunately. It didn't work for me. I had to put it down, and it was a very sluggish read as a result. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a finely written book. I don't mind the actual technicality of the book. I think it actually works alright, and it's not too bad. It's like The Wolf and the Hawk, but I felt like that was a bit more successful, and this one was a bit too slapped together a little bit. I might have to edit out a lot of the sickness and a lot of the coughing in this video because you get why. So let's begin with the traditional stuff of how I do my book review. So let's take a look at the positives and the negatives, and maybe what I think could be improved with this book, because I feel like there's a few things that really need to be worked on. So the first positive that I wrote down here was that the characterizations were quite cute. Also, do you like all my stickers that I made myself, or almost all of them? But anyway, so sorry for sidetracking a bit. So the only two positives I can say is that it has really cute characterizations and it has an interesting premise. So the characterizations, especially like the animal characters, I think were really interesting, and Julian wrote the mannerisms and characteristics of these animals, that she clearly knows how cats and horses behave. So I like that the most. It was very realistic, and then the premise was quite interesting, and I felt like maybe could have just been had a bit more of an interesting tone to it, because there's some moments where it's like, yes, sir, a cat, that I felt like maybe should have just been doubled down on and just worked on more, because that's the part that really caught my attention about this book. Unfortunately, now let's get to the negatives, and there's a number of them that all kind of tie together. So the first negative is the biggest one for me, is that it's completely lacking in detail. I could not grasp anything that was happening in this book because there's just not enough details for things to explain things that were happening, and I felt like I was so confused about what was I supposed to take out from certain moments of this book, and what was I don't understand what certain things were like. When the cat and horse are talking to each other, it's via telepathy somehow, and I'm like, what was that all about? And that's exactly what I mean by lacking in detail, because I don't understand how they were communicating with each other. And on that note, there were just a lot of confusing scenes of even the first instance of the shades or whatever, and I was like, well, what did I take out of that? what did I learn from reading this scene is that, I mean, I guess Princess Joanna had to deal with difficulties quite early on in her life, but again, I felt like I didn't learn all that much, and it felt a bit too run-of-the-mill and not that interesting. And then again, the telepathy, we'll call that just left me just in awe of like, what was this all about? And on the note of not enough, lacking in detail, is that there's not enough world building. There's not enough interesting world building that sets it apart from other fantasy stories. And I know it's supposed to be like a fairy tale, and therefore a bit more minimal. It's not enough to be interesting for me. I felt like it went on for too long, even though it's just 176 pages of when I actually DNF'd it, because I just couldn't continue it. It was, I didn't learn anything about the world, unfortunately. And the final thing about the negatives is that it's got a very sluggish pace because of all those issues I mentioned before. It read so slowly for me, and I felt like it was going on forever, and I was getting no answers at all. And I needed the answers to be interested in the world, and I just didn't find any whatsoever. So it sounded like I really didn't like this book, which unfortunately the case is, yeah, I didn't like this book at all. And not completely hate it, but just like, there was just not enough for me to enjoy it. So I had to put it down, and I give it a 2.8 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. But for, I think, improvements, I would just say to Julian, just double down on working on your world building and help things become a bit more clear for the reader, because unless I missed the point entirely, I like to think that I do understand what was mostly happening in the story, but it wasn't enough for me to be interested, unfortunately. So yeah, wasn't the biggest fan. Hopefully my crappy voice at the moment, my sick voice, was able to communicate how I feel about this book clearly. But yeah, unfortunately, this no was just a no for me. I didn't enjoy it like that much, and it gets the suited meh. I'm sorry about that. I know it's an indie book, and it's from someone who does like to do editing, but I think you maybe needed a second pair of eyes and a second mind to help you go over this, or a third mind. I don't know. I don't know how this book was edited, but I think they needed just a third mind as well to just touch on this and maybe work on the book a bit more, work on the details of the book a bit more. So that will do for this review. So yeah, like, I'm very sorry for my voice, but I've had pneumonia. My voice is a bit weak, and I find it a little bit hard to speak at the moment. So please forgive me about that. So I might be doing a new update video soon, or maybe something based on my own things as well. So yeah. So we'll catch you then. So until we meet again, I'll be waiting, and hopefully I won't be sick.